imagine that the dollar will lose its value. Yes, I mean, it already lost 95% of its value since the introduction of the Federal Reserve, but it took 100 years. This time around, they'll do it in 10 years. They have become more efficient.
They have.
Yeah.
Mark thinks they're going to create inflation. Now, the precedent of Japan suggests that these guys are muppets. The precedent of Japan suggests that when it comes to the organization of economic affairs, if you allow leverage in your society to breach a certain level, we're not sure what that level is, but let's call it 200 or 230% of GDP, then what happens is monetary policy doesn't work. Fiscal policy doesn't work. So Japan is an example where we've had hideous politicians and hideous intervention. They've had helicopters. They have distributed free money to all of their citizens. They've built bridges to nowhere. And prices are falling, and they look set to fall further.
This decade, NIA believes the U.S. will experience an outbreak of hyperinflation that will cause the U.S. dollar to become worthless. Most economists believe the U.S. is more likely to experience a lost decade of deflation, similar to Japan after the bursting of their bubble economy. In Japan, even with prices deflating, many Japanese today are being forced to live in internet cafes or closets.
In Tokyo, there are hundreds of cyber cafes like this one that offer overnight deals. You can stay in your own cubicle with unlimited net access, free drinks and an easy chair to sleep on, all for about £8. And without a place to stay, for Nagasaki, this was better than sleeping on the streets.
This was home for Hidefumi Ito. The size of a closet, it had what he needed most, an internet hookup and computer to job search. Ito rented this net room for around $20 a day after he lost his art gallery director job, his expensive home, and went bankrupt. Then his wife and 3 children left him.
With average GDP growth of 10% in the 1960s, 5% in the 1970s, and 4% in the 1980s, Japan's GDP grew to the second largest in the world. However, during the years 1986 to 1991, a bubble formed in Japan. The Nikkei stock index nearly quadrupled in 5 years to reach a high in 1989 of 38,957. Altogether, between the years 1955 and 1990, Japan's stock prices appreciated 100 times in value and land prices increased 70 times in value. By 1993, Japan's bubble burst with both stock market and real estate prices being cut in half. Throughout the 1990s, Japan experienced deflation, high unemployment, and no economic growth, which led to the Bank of Japan deciding to lower interest rates in 2001 down to 0%. Despite 0% interest rates for many years, the Nikkei fell to a 26-year low in October of 2008 of 6,994, a shocking decline of 82% from its high 19 years earlier. A large part of Japan's savings has been wiped out, and many Japanese can no longer afford to retire.
Tetsuko Katayama is part of a growing trend proving to be at least a short-term fix. At 68, she is one of more than 3,500 elderly people working at this burger chain alone. The oldest is 84. All across the country, people are giving up retirement to keep making ends meet. While that's good for the economy, many elderly people would logically rather be enjoying their golden years somewhere else.
Japan's official debt-to-GDP ratio is currently 203% compared to the U.S. debt-GDP ratio of 91.5%. This has led to hundreds of NIA members asking us why we believe the U.S. will experience hyperinflation while Japan has experienced decades of deflation. About 95% of Japan's debt is held domestically within the country. Although Japan's savings rate has declined in recent years, down to 3% due to their aging population and their retirement age being raised to 65, Japan's savings rate averaged above 10% for many decades, and during the mid-1970s averaged above 20%. The Japanese built a large pool of savings that allowed their government to borrow from its